These classified documents contain proof that the 2024 election results have already been decided by forces operating in the shadows of our government. What I'm about to show you will expose the most sophisticated election manipulation operation in American history. I'm Director James Morrison, and tonight, the truth comes out. For 18 months, I've been investigating reports of systematic election interference targeting the 2024 presidential race. What began as allegations of foreign meddling has revealed something far more sinister: a coordinated deep state operation to control the outcome of America's most important election. Tonight, I'm going to present evidence that will shock every American who believes their vote matters. I'm going to show you how the deep state is using technology, media manipulation, and bureaucratic power to ensure that democracy becomes nothing more than political theater. The evidence I'm presenting comes from classified intelligence reports, internal government communications, and whistleblower testimony from patriots inside the system who refuse to be complicit in the destruction of American democracy. What you're about to learn will change forever how you view elections in America. The manipulation begins with the voting machines themselves. While Americans were told that concerns about Dominion voting systems were conspiracy theories, my investigation has uncovered classified intelligence proving that electronic voting systems across America have been systematically compromised. Internal NSA documents reveal that foreign intelligence services have successfully penetrated the software systems used by major voting machine manufacturers. These aren't theoretical vulnerabilities, they're active backdoors that allow real-time manipulation of vote tallies. The operation is so sophisticated that vote switching occurs at the transmission level, after ballots are scanned but before results are reported to election officials. This means audits of paper ballots show one result while transmitted results show another. Dr. Amanda Foster worked as a cybersecurity contractor for the Department of Homeland Security's Election Security Division. Her job was to monitor foreign attempts to interfere with American voting systems. What Dr. Foster discovered was that the foreign interference wasn't coming from outside America's election systems. It was being facilitated from within. Intelligence agencies that were supposed to protect election integrity were actually coordinating with foreign operatives to ensure specific outcomes. Foster documented how classified intelligence about voting system vulnerabilities was shared with foreign partners who then used that information to develop sophisticated attack vectors. The same agencies warning about foreign election interference were providing the roadmap for that interference. When Foster attempted to report these activities through official channels, she was transferred to a non-sensitive position and told that her security clearance was under review for reliability concerns. The deep state's election manipulation operation extends far beyond electronic voting systems. They've created a nationwide ballot harvesting network that operates under the cover of legitimate voter outreach programs. Marcus Rodriguez served as a field coordinator for what appeared to be a nonpartisan voter registration organization operating in 6 swing states. His job was to register new voters and help them navigate the voting process. What Rodriguez discovered was that his organization was actually a front for a sophisticated ballot harvesting operation funded through a complex network of dark money groups with connections to intelligence contractors. The operation targeted specific demographic groups in key precincts. Newly registered voters were contacted by voter assistance volunteers who offered to help them complete their mail-in ballots to ensure their votes were counted properly. These volunteers used sophisticated psychological profiling to identify voters likely to support specific candidates. Voters supporting approved candidates received genuine assistance with their ballots. Voters supporting disapproved candidates had their ballots intercepted, destroyed, or modified. The operation was so systematic that ballot harvesting teams had quota requirements for each precinct. They were required to deliver specific vote margins in targeted districts to ensure overall state-level outcomes met predetermined targets. Rodriguez documented the entire operation, including financial records showing payments from intelligence-linked contractors and communication logs detailing coordination between ballot harvesting teams and central command centers. When Rodriguez attempted to expose the operation, he was arrested, on fabricated charges of voter fraud, the very crime he was trying to report. Election manipulation requires more than just changing votes. It requires controlling the narrative that shapes voter behavior. My investigation has uncovered evidence of systematic coordination between intelligence agencies and major media organizations to manipulate public opinion about the 2024 election. Sarah Mitchell worked as a senior producer for a major cable news network. Her job was to coordinate election coverage and ensure that reporting met editorial standards for accuracy and fairness. What Mitchell discovered was that editorial decisions about election coverage weren't being made by journalists. They were being directed by former intelligence officials embedded within news organizations as national security consultants. These consultants provided regular guidance about which stories to emphasize, which candidates to scrutinize, and which narratives to promote or suppress. The guidance was presented as protecting national security, but the effect was to create coordinated media coverage that favored specific electoral outcomes. Internal communications that Mitchell preserved showed detailed coordination between news organizations about election coverage. Story angles, interview questions, and even specific phrases were coordinated across multiple networks to ensure consistent messaging. The coordination extended to social media platforms, where former intelligence officials working for technology companies ensured that election-related content was promoted or suppressed according to the same guidelines being used by traditional media. Mitchell documented how stories about election irregularities were systematically buried, while stories promoting confidence in election integrity were amplified, regardless of their factual accuracy. When Mitchell refused to comply with editorial directives that she believed violated journalistic ethics, she was terminated for failure to meet performance standards. Social media platforms have become the primary source of political information for millions of Americans. My investigation reveals that these platforms are being systematically manipulated to influence voter behavior and suppress information that might affect election outcomes. David Chen worked as a content moderation specialist for a major social media platform. His job was to review reported content and determine whether it violated platform policies regarding misinformation or harmful content. What Chen discovered was that content moderation decisions about election-related posts weren't being made based on factual accuracy. They were being made based on political considerations coordinated with government officials. Chen documented how posts questioning election integrity were automatically flagged for suppression, while posts promoting confidence in election systems were algorithmically boosted, regardless of their factual merit. The manipulation extended beyond content moderation to algorithmic promotion. Posts supporting approved candidates were artificially amplified to reach larger audiences, while posts supporting disapproved candidates were shadow banned or throttled to limit their reach. Chen preserved evidence showing that these algorithmic manipulations were coordinated with government officials who provided regular guidance about which political content should be promoted or suppressed. The system was so sophisticated that platform users never realized their social media feeds were being artificially curated to influence their political opinions and voting behavior. When Chen attempted to raise concerns about these practices, he was terminated for violating confidentiality agreements and threatened with prosecution for allegedly stealing proprietary information. The deep state's election manipulation begins long before votes are cast. They have systematically manipulated voter registration databases to ensure that only approved voters can participate in elections. Lisa Park worked as a database administrator for a state election office. Her job was to maintain voter registration records and ensure that eligible citizens could participate in elections. What Park discovered was that voter registration databases were being systematically manipulated to remove or alter registrations for voters likely to support disapproved candidates. The manipulation was subtle but effective. Voters in certain demographic groups found their registrations purged for technical violations, their addresses changed without their knowledge, or their party affiliations modified. Park documented how these database errors disproportionately affected voters in specific geographic areas and demographic groups. The errors were presented as routine database maintenance, but the pattern clearly showed systematic targeting. The operation was coordinated with voter outreach programs that selectively informed some voters about registration problems, while leaving others unaware that their voting eligibility had been compromised. Park preserved evidence showing that database administrators received specific instructions about which voter records to target for quality control reviews that resulted in registration problems. When Park attempted to report these activities, she was transferred to a different department and told that her database access was being revoked for security reasons. While Americans have been told that foreign interference in elections is a threat to democracy, my investigation reveals that foreign coordination with the deep state is actually part of the election manipulation strategy. Colonel Robert Hayes served as a military liaison to Allied intelligence services. His job was to coordinate counterintelligence operations and share information about threats to democratic institutions. What Hayes discovered was that intelligence sharing agreements were being used to circumvent legal restrictions on domestic surveillance and election interference. Foreign intelligence services were conducting surveillance on American citizens and political candidates that would be illegal for American agencies to perform. This intelligence was then shared back to American officials through liaison channels that provided legal cover for otherwise illegal activities. Hayes documented how this system allowed American intelligence agencies to obtain detailed information about political candidates, their supporters, and their campaign strategies without technically violating laws prohibiting domestic political surveillance. The intelligence was used to develop sophisticated profiles of voter behavior, identify key influencers in specific communities, and design targeted influence operations to affect electoral outcomes. Hayes preserved communications showing coordination between American and foreign officials about which candidates posed threats to democratic stability and required special monitoring. When Hayes raised concerns about these activities, he was told that questioning intelligence sharing agreements could compromise national security and alliance relationships. Election manipulation requires substantial financial resources. My investigation has uncovered evidence of systematic financial warfare designed to advantage approved candidates while sabotaging disapproved candidates. Jennifer Walsh worked as a compliance officer for a major bank's government relations division. Her job was to ensure that political donations and campaign finance activities complied with federal regulations. What Walsh discovered was that financial institutions were systematically manipulating access to banking services based on political considerations coordinated with government officials. Candidates approved by the deep state received enhanced banking services, expedited loan processing, and relaxed compliance requirements. Candidates disapproved by the deep state faced account closures, loan denials, and intensive regulatory scrutiny designed to cripple their campaign operations. Walsh documented how these financial manipulations were coordinated across multiple institutions to ensure that disapproved candidates couldn't access the banking services necessary to run effective campaigns. The system extended to payment processors, credit card companies, and fundraising platforms, creating a comprehensive financial blockade against candidates who threatened deep state interests. Walsh preserved evidence showing that these financial decisions weren't based on business considerations. They were based on political directives from government officials with connections to intelligence agencies. When Walsh attempted to report these activities, she was terminated for performance issues and blacklisted from employment in the financial services industry. The deep state's election manipulation includes coordination with judicial officials to ensure that legal challenges to election irregularities are dismissed or delayed until after elections are certified. Attorney Michael Foster worked as a law clerk for a federal judge handling election-related cases. His job was to research legal precedents and prepare judicial opinions on complex constitutional questions. What Foster discovered was that judicial decisions about election cases weren't being based on legal analysis. They were being coordinated with former colleagues who had moved from judicial positions to intelligence agencies. Foster documented how judges received informal guidance about which election cases posed national security concerns and should be handled with special consideration for maintaining public confidence in electoral institutions. The guidance system ensured that cases challenging election integrity were dismissed on procedural grounds, while cases supporting election integrity were expedited and given favorable rulings. Foster preserved communications showing coordination between judicial officials and intelligence community representatives about the national security implications of various election cases. The coordination was presented as protecting democratic institutions, but the effect was to ensure that judicial review of election processes always supported predetermined outcomes. When Foster attempted to expose this coordination, he was terminated for violating confidentiality rules and threatened with prosecution for allegedly disclosing privileged judicial communications. At the center of the deep state election manipulation operation is unprecedented coordination between intelligence agencies that are legally prohibited from domestic political activities. Agent Patricia Rodriguez worked in the CIA's Domestic Liaison Office. Her job was to coordinate with other intelligence agencies on matters affecting national security. What Rodriguez discovered was that intelligence agencies were using national security justifications to engage in comprehensive domestic political surveillance and manipulation activities. The agencies created a joint task force officially focused on protecting elections from foreign interference, but actually focused on ensuring specific electoral outcomes that supported intelligence community interests. Rodriguez documented how this task force coordinated all aspects of the election manipulation operation: voting system vulnerabilities, media narrative control, social media manipulation, voter registration targeting, and judicial coordination. The task force operated under classification levels that prevented oversight from Congress or other government institutions, essentially creating an accountability-free zone for political manipulation. Rodriguez preserved evidence showing that task force activities were coordinated with foreign intelligence services and private contractors to provide additional legal cover for activities that would otherwise be illegal. When Rodriguez attempted to report these activities through official channels, she was told that questioning task force operations could compromise national security and result in prosecution for unauthorized disclosure. The deep state's 2024 election manipulation builds on lessons learned from a comprehensive testing operation conducted during the 2020 election. Lieutenant Colonel James Carter served as a military intelligence analyst assigned to monitor foreign interference in the 2020 election. His job was to identify and report attempts by foreign adversaries to manipulate American electoral processes. What Carter discovered was that the foreign interference he was tasked to monitor was actually being coordinated with American intelligence agencies as part of a comprehensive testing operation for election manipulation techniques. Carter documented how various manipulation methods were tested during 2020 to determine their effectiveness and develop countermeasures against detection. The testing included electronic vote manipulation, ballot harvesting, media coordination, social media manipulation, voter registration targeting, and judicial coordination. Carter preserved evidence showing that the effectiveness of each manipulation technique was carefully measured and analyzed to develop improved methods for future elections. The 2020 election served as a comprehensive testing ground for the sophisticated manipulation operation being deployed in 2024. When Carter attempted to report these activities, he was told that his analysis was classified and discussing it outside secure channels would constitute a breach of national security. The deep state election manipulation operation for 2024 is currently active and operating according to predetermined timelines. Based on intelligence from current sources within the system, the manipulation operation has already achieved several key objectives. Voting system vulnerabilities have been confirmed and exploitation methods tested. Ballot harvesting networks are operational in all swing states. Media coordination protocols are active across major news organizations. Social media manipulation algorithms are deployed and functioning. Voter registration databases have been prepared with targeted modifications. Financial warfare operations are active against disapproved candidates. Judicial coordination mechanisms are in place for post-election legal challenges. The operation is designed to ensure specific outcomes while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate democratic process. My sources indicate that the manipulation is so comprehensive that traditional election monitoring and audit procedures are insufficient to detect or prevent the predetermined outcomes. When Foster attempted to expose this coordination, he was terminated for violating confidentiality rules and threatened with prosecution for allegedly disclosing privileged judicial communications. At the center of the deep state election manipulation operation is unprecedented coordination between intelligence agencies that are legally prohibited from domestic political activities. Agent Patricia Rodriguez worked in the CIA's Domestic Liaison Office. Her job was to coordinate with other intelligence agencies on matters affecting national security. What Rodriguez discovered was that intelligence agencies were using national security justifications to engage in comprehensive domestic political surveillance and manipulation activities. The agencies created a joint task force officially focused on protecting elections from foreign interference, but actually focused on ensuring specific electoral outcomes that supported intelligence community interests. Rodriguez documented how this task force coordinated all aspects of the election manipulation operation: voting system vulnerabilities, media narrative control, social media manipulation, voter registration targeting, and judicial coordination. The task force operated under classification levels that prevented oversight from Congress or other government institutions, essentially creating an accountability-free zone for political manipulation. Rodriguez preserved evidence showing the task force activities were coordinated with foreign intelligence services and private contractors to provide additional legal cover for activities that would otherwise be illegal. When Rodriguez attempted to report these activities through official channels, she was told that questioning task force operations could compromise national security and result in prosecution for unauthorized disclosure. The deep state's 2024 election manipulation builds on lessons learned from a comprehensive testing operation conducted during the 2020 election. Lieutenant Colonel James Carter served as a military intelligence analyst assigned to monitor foreign interference in the 2020 election. His job was to identify and report attempts by foreign adversaries to manipulate American electoral processes. What Carter discovered was that the foreign interference he was tasked to monitor was actually being coordinated with American intelligence agencies as part of a comprehensive testing operation for election manipulation techniques. Carter documented how various manipulation methods were tested during 2020 to determine their effectiveness and develop countermeasures against detection. The testing included electronic vote manipulation, ballot harvesting, media coordination, social media manipulation, voter registration targeting, and judicial coordination. Carter preserved evidence showing that the effectiveness of each manipulation technique was carefully measured and analyzed to develop improved methods for future elections. The 2020 election served as a comprehensive testing ground for the sophisticated manipulation operation being deployed in 2024. When Carter attempted to report these activities, he was told that his analysis was classified and discussing it outside secure channels would constitute a breach of national security. The deep state election manipulation operation for 2024 is currently active and operating according to predetermined timelines. Based on intelligence from current sources within the system, the manipulation operation has already achieved several key objectives. Voting system vulnerabilities have been confirmed and exploitation methods tested. Ballot harvesting networks are operational in all swing states. Media coordination protocols are active across major news organizations. Social media manipulation algorithms are deployed and functioning. Voter registration databases have been prepared with targeted modifications. Financial warfare operations are active against disapproved candidates. Judicial coordination mechanisms are in place for post-election legal challenges. The operation is designed to ensure specific outcomes while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate democratic process. My sources indicate that the manipulation is so comprehensive that traditional election monitoring and audit procedures are insufficient to detect or prevent the predetermined outcomes. The evidence I've presented tonight comes from patriots within the system who refuse to participate in the destruction of American democracy. Each person who provided evidence for this investigation understood that they were risking their careers, their freedom, and potentially their lives to expose the truth. They preserved documents, recorded conversations, and maintained detailed logs of activities they witnessed because they believed the American people deserved to know how their democracy is being stolen. These patriots come from every level of government: intelligence agencies, military services, civilian departments, contracted organizations, and private companies involved in the election manipulation operation. The evidence they provided has been independently corroborated through multiple sources and cross-referenced with publicly available information to ensure accuracy. The pattern of evidence is so consistent and comprehensive that it proves beyond any reasonable doubt that a systematic operation to manipulate the 2024 election is currently active. The courage of these whistleblowers provides America with the opportunity to understand and potentially stop the theft of democracy before it's too late. What I've revealed tonight represents the gravest constitutional crisis in American history. The very foundations of democratic government are being systematically undermined by forces operating within the government itself. The deep state has created a system that makes democratic choice an illusion while maintaining the appearance of legitimate elections. If this operation succeeds, future elections will be meaningless exercises in political theater designed to provide legitimacy for predetermined outcomes. The Constitution provides no mechanism for addressing systematic election manipulation coordinated by intelligence agencies operating outside legal oversight. Traditional checks and balances have been neutralized through coordination between legislative, judicial, and executive branch officials who benefit from the current system. Congressional oversight has been prevented through classification and national security justifications that make investigation impossible. Judicial review has been compromised through coordination between courts and intelligence agencies that ensures favorable rulings for the manipulation operation. Despite the overwhelming evidence of election manipulation, traditional media organizations will not report these revelations because they are complicit in the operation. The same coordination mechanisms that control election coverage will be used to suppress information about election manipulation. Stories about deep state election interference will be labeled as conspiracy theories or disinformation, regardless of the evidence supporting them. Social media platforms will suppress sharing of information about election manipulation while promoting content that supports confidence in electoral integrity. The American people will be told that concerns about election manipulation are threats to democracy, when the real threat to democracy is the manipulation itself. This information suppression is part of the psychological operation designed to prevent Americans from understanding how their democracy has been compromised. The only way this information can reach the American people is through independent media and direct citizen communication that bypasses controlled information channels. America faces the most important choice in its history. We can accept the illusion of democracy while our elections are controlled by deep state operatives, or we can demand real democracy, even if it requires confronting uncomfortable truths about our institutions. The evidence I've presented tonight proves that the 2024 election is being systematically manipulated to ensure predetermined outcomes. Traditional election monitoring, auditing, and legal challenge procedures are insufficient to detect or prevent this manipulation because the manipulation is being coordinated by the same institutions responsible for election integrity. The only protection against election manipulation is informed citizen awareness and organized citizen action that demands transparency and accountability from institutions that have operated in secrecy. Americans must decide whether they will accept managed democracy or demand real democracy. They must decide whether they will trust institutions that have systematically betrayed their trust or demand new institutions that serve democratic principles. They must decide whether they will allow their votes to be managed by intelligence operatives or fight to restore genuine electoral choice. The 2024 election is happening now. Early voting has begun in some states. Mail-in ballots are being distributed. The manipulation operation is active and achieving its objectives. Every day that passes without citizen action makes it more difficult to restore electoral integrity and democratic choice. The window for preventing the completion of this operation is closing rapidly. I've spent my career serving American interests within institutions I believed protected democracy. Tonight, I've presented evidence that these institutions have become the greatest threat to democracy. I've fulfilled my oath to defend the Constitution by exposing domestic enemies of democratic government. Now it's up to the American people to decide what they're willing to do to save their democracy. This is Director James Morrison. The deep state is stealing your democracy. The question is, are you going to let them?